the issue that I'm going to talk about is a little bit more political. And it's actually about discrimination, because to understand inclusion, we need to understand the foundations, or the core problem, which is discrimination. And I don't know, have you heard about the concept of intersectionality? Anyone? Just okay. Yeah. It's interesting that you wanted me to talk about it, because within gender studies, that is my field, it's still kind of a radical concept, and again very political. So it's quite interesting to talk about it in this context and see what you can do with it here. In the US, I've seen some studies about IT and intersectionality, so I mean, there's a longer history of researching these topics and working on it, so it's not totally new, but yeah, probably in the Swedish context. So it's really too bad that... Can you see this, or should I read it? No. Okay, I can't see it either. So this is like a cartoon that talks about or kind of shows the two different ways or two different life trajectories for two kids. And on the one hand, it says, Richard's parents will do anything for their baby. And there's the dad, the mom, hugging him and saying clever and good boy. And on the other hand, there's a girl, and it says, and so will Paula's parents. They also love her, obviously. And that's why they're working 2 jobs instead. And this is kind of the core, again, of if you think about questions regarding privilege or differences, people have different life trajectories that affect their, or that exclude them at the end. And this is kind of a famous picture. I don't know if you've seen it, but again, about how different life trajectories can look like. And I know this is a difficult topic, and I know it makes many people uncomfortable, but nonetheless, again, if we want to work for an inclusive environment, or even in the broader sense, a better world, we need to touch on these subjects. And I actually, which is a first as well, wanted to talk about my own trajectory, because I think it kind of has colored the way I talk about these issues, and I think it's a good departing point for understanding these issues. Are everyone with me still? Yeah? Okay, thanks. Some social researchers are saying that there's something called a double point of view, meaning that if you've been marginalized, you're gonna both view, because you're forced to see the majority society and their expectations of you, but you're also living a certain reality that is invisible for those in power. And I myself, I have, my parents are from Eastern Europe and from the Middle East, and I came to Sweden when I was a little girl and grew up in Rosengård. I don't know if you, yeah, some people have heard about it, but, or the majority. It's one of the large immigrant areas in Sweden, actually. And even though it's like, I don't want to stand here and point, oh, this girl or this woman is me. Everyone wants to be strong, right? And yeah, but I think the reality is that growing up in Rosengård and being an immigrant in Sweden obviously has affected me, and I've really lived those invisible rules. I mean, they've affected me. So I think I have a sensitivity, I think, towards those issues that I'm maybe trying to now working on with migrants and people that are marginalized globally. I mean, I'm trying to put that perspective in there. But okay, where I want to lead this discussion is that, or presentation is that discrimination is something really real. I mean, we can stand here and laugh and, oh, I do everything wrong. But it really affects people and life trajectories, and the majority of people don't, I mean, they stay where they were born because of these invisible, again, rules. And there's actually some studies done, very recent studies on how racism, for example, causes social trauma, and that even changes your DNA, and it lives on for several generations. So it's quite a serious issue, and it's important. So. This is a picture from when I've been working in Mexico with Central American transit migrants. And this is a woman, or a very young woman, traveling towards the US on top of cargo trains. I don't know if you know about the situation in Mexico or with transit migrants. This is another picture from the trains. And again, discrimination, it can lead, I mean, in the worst instances, even to death, to people risking their lives. And yeah. So in this day of age, it would seem we would like to think that we as organizations or people, that we don't discriminate, because we do have a lot of knowledge, and there has been a mainstreaming in one sense of human rights, and we have increased discussions about these issues. But at the same time, we are, even in an organization like this, we're going to be affected by the surrounding society and by inequality and all that. This isn't a closed space. We are affected by that. So we need to confront that in order to work, again, towards true inclusion. I mean, again, these horrible pictures, but again, reality. This is a Roma camp here in Sweden. And next picture, it's a political issue, but yeah, Umeåkers. And this is the reality we have around us. I imagine you all know, yeah. And a party that is growing in political relevance. So we have established that discrimination is something real, I hope, and that it will affect whatever work you're going to do here, and that you have to take that into account for truly inclusive work. So in order to go even deeper into the issue of discrimination, I would want to talk a little bit or mention a little bit about social norms. And social norms can be and actually are important for upholding society and relationships. But these are also the little, and not always that little, mechanism behind exclusions through which we uphold barriers against others. So we need to be aware of those social norms. And the norms, they set the stage, and they delimit the expectations and our behaviors and how we talk and how we act and all social spaces, as well as society at large, have these norms. And often we have internalized these norms, so we don't even think about it. So a good example for how norms work is that when we get that gut feeling about liking someone or not liking someone, it's actually just these norms getting out. So norms, or this gut sense, is clearly defined and affected by frames that are affected by our upbringing, our experiences, culture, and education. So this blindness regarding social norms is especially the case when you're the one in power. So actually, the closer to the norm you are, the more power you have, and it becomes even more difficult to understand and uncover these different limits or consequences. Are everyone with me still? Yeah? Okay. So norms are essentially about getting it, and those that don't get the message are considered difficult and weird, and we don't want anything to do with them. And it creates, for those that are affected by it, it creates a lot of discomfort, which is a sort of punishing mechanism, meaning that people will avoid, for example, coming here if they feel excluded because they don't want to feel that feeling, or they will just change behaviors to fit in, which is probably the opposite of what a dynamic and thriving society as well as organization wants and needs. So, yeah, something like that. So, intersectionality, which I was asked to talk about, is a theory that explains the rules of the game, where the norms exist and work, and and we need to understand these rules of the game and who sets them in order to make them visible. And so essentially, we need to break the status quo of common understandings and assumption about these gut feelings by looking towards these the groups that have less power in society, ergo in the organization where we're working. So intersectionality is an approach. It's a way of thinking that was developed by Black feminists, or the Black feminist movement in the US during the 1980s. Angela Davis, I don't know if you've heard about her, but you should. She's one of the foremost thinkers and academics and researchers. She's actually coming to Stockholm in a couple of weeks that talks about these issues. And it was a response. Intersectionality was a response towards kind of easy assumptions regarding oppression, where the common academic theory regarding feminism was that all women's experiences all over the world are similar experiences of oppression. And here the Black feminists emerged, and they were saying, no, but it's not like, even though we're all women, we're not oppressed or excluded in the same manner. So they added ideas regarding race, regarding class, and how that affects exclusion. So essentially, intersectionality is a more nuanced view, a more nuanced understanding about how power works, about how exclusion works. Yeah, another cartoon that I don't know if... I feel this is really political, but yeah, it's good, I think. that's the point. But this is a cartoon kind of describing the tensions between black feminists and white feminists, from which intersectionality developed as a perspective. And it says, the guy says to the girl, why do you have to call it feminism? We all deserve equality, and the term makes me feel left out. You should be an equalist or a humanist. And the girl or woman answers, because the continued disenfranchisement of women needs to be addressed specifically. So it's not just about being an equalist or a humanist. And at the bottom, the white lady is saying to the black one, why do you need black feminism? It should just be feminism. Why would you divide us like that? And she answers, really? So it's, again, about these differences of experience. And even though you can be excluded in one sense, you need to look at these more nuanced workings of exclusion. Intersectionality looks at historically important structures that are those that continue to be the ones that affect who is excluded or not. And this has been with us for many centuries and through colonialism and so on. So the structures most often talked about in this context is class, gender, and race, ethnicity. So having an intersectional perspective means that you take that, you see all oppression as connected, and you see how these links affect experience. And important to note, and it's a very important part for intersectional thinking, for getting out of your common assumption box. It's that we're all located somewhere in the fabric of society, and we need to be aware of that, of our different social locations, in order to be more inclusive. So, in short, intersectional thinking, it looks at oppression and exclusion, as something multi-dimensional, and it questions what we mean when we say everybody. Who is everybody? We need to be asking ourselves that. And also it understands how the surrounding world affects prejudices. And it focuses on social positions and demands something called self-reflexivity, which is the process of thinking about your social position, thinking about how you're affecting other people, even though you don't want to see that. And it understands, again, privilege, how you affect other people, how your social position. Political, so essentially, intersectionality is about profound and sustainable changes in the way we think. It's not just about thinking about the others, but it's actually more so about thinking about ourselves. Otherwise, it's just going to be superficial work, which is often the work that is done. So you need to start with the process of self-reflexivity. And that should be the basis for breaking out of your preconceived notions about the world. And this is because the way we think and the way we behave at home, here, or at the street, We have internalized modes of thinking, and we need to break loose of them. In social theory, this is called ideology. And these are kind of the frames that then go on to creating the norms. So to break free from these mental constraints, from this box, which it is actually, a very limiting one, is that you have to keep on questioning, and you have to be better informed about the rest of society and about what is going on. And you have to improve your consciousness to understand how structures such as gender and class affect people's possibilities of partaking or of coming in here. So questioning is a good thing, and informing yourself. Intersectional thinking also takes into account, it's not just towards those that have power, but it puts a bit of responsibility of those that have less power, of being able to see the mechanisms of self-oppression that many people do towards themselves, how ideology affects the way you view yourself. So in the face of fear or insecurity, it's important to feel, to get angry, to take space, to break norms, to make some trouble. And this is probably a good suggestion, I mean, for everyone, I think. So true inclusion is more complex than just simple omission of certain groups. Just because you're concerned about diversity doesn't mean that you're doing any actual change, and then you're not going to change the organization. Other voices must have an impact and influence the way you think and work. It's not about inserting someone ethnically different or having more women or in your organization, and therefore then considering, oh, I have it all covered. No, true inclusion is about the ability to take in other perspectives and ways of looking at the world. And that is how you're actually going to open up this space. So if we go back to this picture, I think essentially what this is about is thinking about other people's locations, your own locations, your privileges here at Foo Café, and sometimes it's difficult to accept that one has privileges, that one is this person there, but actually if you realize that, there's more, you can do a lot more change, and change for the better, and taking a stance and calling attention to maltreatment or to people being excluded. So it's a good thing to obviously to have power as well, and not something to be ashamed of in that sense. But that puts also responsibility in taking an active part in creating safe spaces here and outside as well. So so this is a picture from 2 days ago. It's George Bush at the Katrina. It's too bad it's so, I can't really see it well. But it's been 10 or 15 years, no, 10 years since Katrina, the Katrina hurricane. So George Bush was there. And I don't know if you see or read the picture in the same way that I do, or yeah, but it would be a good example for or to start discussions about how one could start to think intersectionally. Just analyzing the what's happening here, who's taking what roles and what different positions and the rules, and yeah, I think that that would be a good starting point. And there's also some questions for continued thoughts about this issue.